Welcome. This session of Down to Earth focuses on the psychological aspect of human existence, and that's predominantly understanding the emotions. So, this topic focuses on various types of emotions, the origin of those emotions, and their association with cross cultural backgrounds. So, the first one that we would understand is pride. Now, pride is considered differently in different segments of the society. So let's say in an individualistic society like United States, it is considered as a sign of achievement. However, in a collective society like India, it is considered as a sign of arrogance. Now, pride is used to manage social hierarchy, but the elements of pride have been seen or manifested in various forms. For example, even when Paralympic winners are seen, a total blind Paralympic winner could also depict some sign of pride. So that's not a kind of arrogance. So the basic idea to understand here is pride could be intrinsic, and that's because of the achievement, a higher merit, and this is a non-verbal kind of communication that exists. Now, initially this was discovered in smaller societies like Burkina Faso in West Africa, and this was considered as non-verbal expression. We have taken various instances where this has been explained to demarcate a higher status, and then cultural differences as we already studied. The next is scientifically, if we talk about the behaviors are sometimes considered as retrospective or prospective. So retrospective is when you achieve something, they then it is being advertised and it reflects a new status, so it's actually not, we can say, that healthy. But on the other hand, there is a prospective pride which says that your efforts actually led you to an achievement, and that is a way you would understand that success being attained is more beneficial, and the main idea would be to move on to the path of achievement or success. The next is understanding the difference between pride and confidence. So confidence is an internal state, and it talks about achieving something which usually helps to influence the behavior. So confidence, we can say, is a key component of pride, but pride can be due to confidence, or which could be attained intrinsically, or it could be because of external phenomena. Someone can say my family member is a politician, or my family member is a officer, and because of that they might have pride in that. But there can be another kind of pride which is because of the confidence, because of the achievement that you get in life. So self confidence depends on how much you actually believe in yourself, and this would help you develop yourself as a socially valuable person. The next is sometimes your skills are also important. Your skills are the set of information that help you sail through the difficult periods, but at other time your skills could be the reason that you can fall short of it. That means what has been rightly said in Bible is pride goes before a fall. That means an individual's downfall is preceded by the pride. If you are arrogant, if you have pride because of some reason, that could be the reason for your downfall next. So there has to be a proper balance which has to be maintained, and that's one of the major aspects which has been discussed. And as we said, it has religious connotations as well. For example, a butcher selling steaks in United States might feel pride about it, but that would not happen true in India, where there could be an outrage because it is from cows, and cows have a religious significance. The next is greed. Greed is a desire to have more and more, and it's an insatiable desire. That means you constantly want to go for more and more. Now, this can be because of loneliness, because of aloof behavior, and usually it is manifested from isolation. You are not with others, and therefore you feel that collecting resources would help you survive and would give you some kind of pleasure or happiness. So it has been condemned in numerous ways, but again, greed can be of two ways. It could be because of personal disposition where you feel that you need to do something more for yourself. But on the other hand, it could ultimately lead to a harm, because when you are collecting more resources, the resources are falling short for others. There have been numerous scientific researches which have been done on greed, and this talks about the challenges when we are trying to define greed, because when we talk about nations which work on capitalism, that focuses on wealth accumulation, and greed becomes an intrinsic part of it. So it's a human trait that can be explained, but it varies again from individual to individual. So again, I would request that this edition is highly beneficial for students preparing for psychology as one of their subjects for various competitive exams, and specifically psychology as case studies for your answer writing in mains, right? So another important thing is there have been some examples which have been cited for greed, and it is said that participants have been asked how acceptable they find to keep incorrect change received at a store, or to lie at a tax declaration. And these findings show that individuals who have higher greed are more likely to perceive these behavior as okay or as acceptable behavior. Again, there has to be a discrimination between greedy and too greedy, a point where a person satisfies one's need but gets a little more beyond one's need to actually manifest future requirements. That could be considered as a borderline greed. But at the other hand, there could be a case of too greedy, where the person is just accumulating and accumulating, and it eventually turns out into an illness which a person does not intend for. So anthropologists have said that this greed has an evolutionary aspect, and there have been certain ambitions or certain aspects which have remained hidden and in an individual, and ultimately leading to this phenomena. For example, if we talk about countries across the globe, we can say smaller cities are declining and there is an expansion of bigger cities. So there is an always a greed for people to move towards an urban area, to move towards a bigger city, and this results in ultimately social upheavals, environmental challenges, and so on. Now, there have been various religious views on greed. For example, Charvak actually focused on materialism, and he rejected the concept of moksha or liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Similarly, Hinduism upholds the authority of Veda, but this was challenged by Charvak. And then there is various ways through which traders, mainly the Chetiyars or the Marwadi traders, have been focusing on mobilization, because they lack a fixed base for conducting the business, and therefore they were often marginalized or scapegoated. Now, there has been a shift during the 16th and the 17th century, both in India and in Western Europe, and this was a shift towards more economic centric views, specifically in the regions lying closer to Italy, in the regions of Belgium and Holland. The traders actually moved towards charter cities. Those were the cities that could bring in more, that could satisfy the aspects for trade and ultimately an individual's desire and greed. Now, the past evolutions we have seen, but we have seen criticism for greed in the very recent. So Bill Gates has faced criticism for establishing Microsoft Windows as a default operating system on personal computers, and this has been considered as the accumulation of social capital. So there have been various aspects which have been considered with greed, and greed has also led to financial crisis, because the traders which were involved have been redefining greed, and that has ultimately led to the financial crunch or the financial crisis. The next topic is lust. Now, there are three important inherent brain circuits: love, lust, and attachment, and they are deeply rooted and they have a very primitive origin. So very fundamental drives could be understood as deep attachment and the various forms of love, and these have been driven by dopamine receptors. Now, Dopamine could be secreted with a very simple example. I could say on a very hot day, if you drink a cold water, that could satisfy your desire, and that is the release of dopamine in the brain. But sometimes it so happens that these small things do not give you pleasure, and you seek for higher and higher and more refined forms of luxuries, we could say, and that could ultimately lead to a satiety. So there are various neural centers which work, and those have been cited as, for example, the ventral tegmental area induces the dopamine, and this is considered as one of the centers which would induce the emotional response. Similarly, you have the various evolutionary processes which have been responsible for the various desires, including deep attachment, which develops from the mother to a child with the release of oxytocin. And similarly, we have seen that there are such traits which have been found not only in human beings but also in animals. Chimpanzee is one such example where cooperative need behavior has been cited. Similarly, long-term partnerships have been cited in fox, wolf, and there are certain other species where pair bonding has been identified. So, all these emotions, we could say, be it love, anger, joy, fear, jealous, all of them are considered as a cocktail of chemicals, and they actually design how and when the things can be acquired. Now, one of the most important aspect of any successful relationship is commitment, trust, and interpersonal dynamics. Now, it has been cited through studies that if a relationship is 20 years or more, then the serotonin induced areas work well, and therefore the person has reduced risk for depression, reduced risk for mortality, and again, these are signs of a healthy individual. So neuroimaging techniques have shown studies where a healthy life can be seen because of deep attachment and proper love in psychological context. Now, this is one of the important aspects that we have discussed. Another important aspect is envy. Envy is a feeling that a person has for longing for something better, something greater. Now, the envy could be benign or it could be malicious. When I say benign, it is just to feel that I should be at a better of position, but when it is malicious, it is a feeling that I am underserved, or the other one is overserved without any due efforts that the person has put in, and that could be a malicious form of envy. Now, it's important, when there is anger and when there is envy, there is a difference. The basic difference lies is, when you are with your family members, there can be anger, and this anger is usually subsided when the other person apologizes. But when it is an envy, it is more of hatred, and when it is hatred, you do not have any space for apologies. Even if a person would apologize, you won't feel that that person is seriously apologizing, and you would have a soft corner towards that person. No, that is what is envy. So understanding the difference between anger and envy is again important. So there are various experiences, and under various circumstances, these things have been viewed with various dimensions. For example, under Christian teachings, envy is viewed negatively because it is recognized as one of the deadly sins. Similarly, when people perceive themselves at a lower rank compared to others, they always tend to seek for a higher social status, and that motivation could turn out in some case in the form of envy, and that could be malicious envy or it could be a benign envy. When it would be a benign envy, the person would intend just to improve oneself, but when it would be malicious, the person could intend to harm others in order to improve oneself. So that's how the evolutionary theories have talked about envy. So benign and malicious, as we already discussed, and then there is the hatred, the element of hatred associated with envy. Now this element is on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being the worst of, 1 being the least of, and it is believed that only 1% of the case of envy turn out into severe cases of hatred, which could be rated on a scale of 7 or above. So the next important concept that we would discuss is gluttony. Now, gluttony is an excessive desire to have food or to accumulate food or to eat food even if you are not hungry. Now, over the generation the things have changed in the Western Africa region and in the regions of sub-Saharan areas. It was considered that it's important to accumulate food, because whenever you get food, eat as much as you can, because you are not sure when you will get the next diet. But with the changing generations, with the changing phenomena, we have seen that the availability of food is now uniform, ubiquitous, but there are still food scarce regions across the globe. Now, when the availability of food is ubiquitous, we still feel that there is a desire to have more food, and this desire to have more food is predominantly motivated by two things: either a sugary food or a fatty food. Both of them have been causes of non communicable diseases in the recent past, and obesity is one of the disease which has been linked to it. So even if the person is not hungry, even if the person is not willing to eat, being tempted towards that could be one of the simple reasons to have more. Now, figures like Gautam Buddha actually advocated that there has to be modernization of diet after personal experimentations he did in his life. So food industry has been making a lot out of it, because they are now promoting sweet and fatty foods. So Captain Crunch cereal products are some of those. There are products which are healthy on the store, but again, those don't allure people, and therefore they are not sold at that pace as the other items which are ready to eat junk foods that could be available. So again, we do associate positives to gluttony. Now this is due to the historic idea. Sometimes we opt for nutritious choices, and when we are opting for nutritious choices, it could be fresh foods or fresh vegetables, and that could be one of the reasons that gluttony could be satisfied. But on the other hand, if our brain chemistry is working just to satisfy the dopamine desires, then that would reinforce the behavior to go for a junk food, to go for a fatty food, to go for a sugary food. The next is what? The extreme anger manifests hate, and this hate is linked to hating someone in one form or the other, and this could be expressed or externalized, and there could be various aspects that could be associated to it. So there was one case where in Scranton in Pennsylvania, one man shot another because there was snow shoveling which was in his area, and ultimately he shot the other person as well as himself later on. So that could be an example of what. Similarly, when there is an extreme envy, hatred generates, and this hatred could lead to violence, it could lead to homicide, it could lead to assault, and it could lead to familial upsets that could be seen. But anger is another important concept, and as we said, anger could be subsided, because the anger is usually seen when someone apologizes, the anger actually reduces or subsides. And this is the reason that anger is considered very different from envy or hatred. So having hatred for someone and having anger is a totally different thing, and there are different regions of the brain that control it. So researchers have shown that the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex located behind the temple is important to control the thoughts, emotions and behavior of an individual, and managing thoughts or managing emotions when the aggression is there is very important. Now again, the goal of the anger is always to have a feeling that I should be treated in a better way, and therefore when you apologize, the apologies work well. But that does not hold true for envy or for hatred, because when there is a hatred, there can be a serious form of mistreatment. This cannot be resolved with a simple apology and can ultimately turn out into life ruining actions that could be seen. So aggression and hatred could be understood very clearly. Now the next is sloth. Now laziness is one of the combined genetic and environmental trait. Being lazy is nowhere considered as an evil, right? There are famous examples across the globe. For example, Descartes, his sayings have been well known, his philosophies have been well known, but he was considered as one of the most lazy persons because he was not able to wake up every single morning. Similarly, Einstein was considered to move around idle in the free time and just to lounging around and wasting time. But again, scientists have defined laziness differently, because a person whom you think is a lazy person might be involved in some kind of mental activity, and therefore the person is not pursuing a physical activity. Sometimes when you are involved in decision making, again at that time mental activities are at a boom, and therefore physical activities are retarded. And those could be some of the reasons that we cannot simply say that person is lazy. So being lazy or not is a very very subjective judgment, rather than we can simply put it scientifically. It's very very important to understand that there is another phenomena which is strategic laziness. That means a person won't work otherwise, but for a good health the person would be ready to go out for a gym class, and therefore this is an exercise driven intent where self improvement and self betterment is one of the aspects, and this is called as strategic laziness. So we have seen through the evolutionary stages that how this has developed, how science relates to laziness, and finally the last topic that we would discuss is artificial intelligence. Now with artificial intelligence and large language models, we are able to solve difficult tasks in fraction of seconds. However, simple maths problem still takes time to solve, and this could be one of the reasons we could say that the next generations could turn out lazy. But there could be some of the mundane tasks which artificial intelligence can do without any more effort, and therefore professionals could have more free time. So even going out for a vacation could be considered as a leisure, but if the vacation extends, you can turn out that vacation to be a laziness. So there are various ways of defining it, but ultimately it is how you mentally and physically get yourselves involved with some or one or other kind of work. So this whole session was mainly focused on emotions, the various forms of emotions and its implications, its evolution, and cross-cultural studies on emotions. So highly important for those from psychology, optional for your case studies, and again for students from psychology for other exams as well. So stay tuned, and handouts for these are available at Exam Race Current Affairs link below. Thanks for joining in.